Air conditioning.
This year, the company Jerry started decided we'd do something different.
Thanks for calling Jerry Kelly Heating, Air and Electrical.
And electrical.
JerryKelly.com.
And the latest on the Redbirds. This is the Redbird Rush Hour on KMOX.
All right, it's Thursday on the Redbird Rush Hour. Matt, Pauley, and Kevin Wheeler with you here. Obviously looking for participation if you want to be a part of it. We got a full show today. Anytime we have a full show, we'd love to have everything you want to bring to the table, whether it's thrown in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or if you want to text 314-436-7900 because you're listening to us old school on 104.1 KMOX, 1120 AM. Either way, you'll get us. We got a lot to do today. I think, the Cubs, the series starts with the Cubs tomorrow, Matt. There's plenty to talk about there, but to me it's hard to get too detailed on it, in large part because we just saw it.
Yeah.
So it's not much has changed in a week as far as where each team is. In fact, you're coming into the weekend in essentially the same place you were going into that series, that 4-game series at Busch Stadium.
And you left in the same spot because it was a 4-game series split.
Yeah.
So. You can't split this one. That's the first noticeable thing. Somebody's going to win this series, so that's going to be good. So one team will feel good about themselves, and one team won't. We don't totally know the pitching matchups yet. The Cubs
are being weird.
They haven't officially. It's probably Colin Ray,
Yes.
Jamison Tyone, Matthew Boyd.
Yeah.
That's what we're likely to see from them. But the Cubs are doing what Craig Counsell has always done, and that's just waiting until the last possible moment.
Because it matters.
I
hate when teams do that stuff.
Whatever, I don't care. Michaelis, Liberatore, Fetty are the three going for the Cardinals. We know that for sure.
We're getting an edge by being super secret because we don't. The other team doesn't have reports on every pitcher you have.
Right.
Like, what do you? Well, there's no secret, man. Everybody knows. Go execute your pitches, man. It doesn't matter who's out there. Well,
unless they're going to go do something wacky over the next 3 days.
Sure, right,
which
right.
is possible.
No, it's not. No, they could. You never know. You don't know if somebody's dinged up and they want to change things up or not. Anyway, I'm done picking on Craig Counsell. But what I thought would be an interesting jumping off point today, and again love to get people's comments or thoughts on this, either on the stream, on the social media outlets that you're watching or listening on, or on the text line. What's the biggest difference between the Cardinals and the Cubs? Because I think there's one. It's not one player, although it might be, but it's one specific thing that is the difference between these two teams and why the Cubs have been better than the Cardinals.
Do you want to give them?
Well, I don't know if you want to go first. I'll go first, but I didn't know if you wanted to go first. Or...
No, yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me is that they've got a dude in Kyle Tucker who they can just count on.
Star power. Amen.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the difference between these two teams. Otherwise, if you're just talking about the well-roundedness of the roster, I think they're equal. In fact, the Cardinals are every bit as good in terms of, like the guys that are hitting 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that, we kind of touched on this a little bit with Bernie today on DGS, Matt, that, he's been talking about this. We've all been talking about the fact that this team needs a superstar or two. And that was the idea behind getting Nolan Arenado. It was one of the reasons. Like, they know this. The Cardinals know this. This isn't scolding them in any way because they know it. That's why they went out and got Paul Goldschmidt. It's why they went out and traded for Nolan Arenado. They know they need stars, but that plan didn't get them what they wanted, and it didn't last very long. And I think that it's very clear that it's hard to be a top team without at least one or two, and I'm talking position players now, one or two anchor guys that you can rely on.
And I don't know if those trades are happening in today's baseball. The Arenado trade absolutely isn't. That was connected in some ways to COVID. It was connected to a Colorado organization that is scared to do a lot of things, and they just make terrible decisions. Even the Arizona and Goldschmidt thing, I think that goes down a little bit differently. So, look, the Cardinals are going to have more money moving forward because I'm very confident that Chaim Bloom is going to help cultivate a system that the back end of the roster is going to be adequately filled by players coming up through the system. So that means they're going to be able to pool more of their money for high-end players. But even if they can spend a little bit more in free agency, really the true way to go get a star player is to develop them yourself if you're the Cardinals.
The problem for this current Cardinals group in that way is that takes a long time.
It does, yeah.
Like, you're not going to look at, like, okay, next year we develop another superstar. And again, I think Weatherholt has the chance to be a star. I don't think he's what we're talking about, though. I don't think he's a Bryce Harper, Albert Pujols, Kyle Tucker kind of guy. Is he maybe the next kind of level down? I think that's probably fair. And I have said it on the air, and I'll say it again. I think his pure upside, like if Weatherholt is everything everybody hopes he is, then he's probably Chase Utley. And Chase Utley was a star. And he was also surrounded by other stars. That's why Philly was good, because they had Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard, right? They didn't just have the one guy. So even if we're going to allow that Weatherholt has that upside, we don't know, A, when he's going to be here, B, how long it will take to get to that level, because you never know with new guys arriving. It might be right away. It might be 2 years down the road. So the reason why I asked it today, in part, is because it's one of the most stark differences between these two teams. The Cubs have those guys, and they have more than one. But mainly, it's mainly Tucker. But like PCA may be becoming that when you look at the all-around game, plus the flash that he brings along with the power, the speed, and the Gold Glove defense. Seiya Suzuki is not a superstar, but he's certainly a high-end player. But Tucker's that guy. Kyle Tucker's that guy for sure.
Yeah, that's the first, when you asked the question, that was the first name, the difference between the Cardinals and the Cubs. Because, look, the Cardinals have guys who can, if they're not stars right now, they can emerge in that. Brendan Donovan is likely going to be an all-star this year, and rightfully so. We know about the StatCast numbers that Lars Nootbaar puts up and who he could potentially be. Mason Wynn is turning into a super high-end shortstop, but he's always going to be a guy that I think we look at the glove first, no matter how good he is from an offensive standpoint. But the Cardinals are a step short when it comes to those legitimate middle-of-the-order superstar-type players.
I mean, there's only one guy on the entire roster who has an OPS above 800, and he's on the injured list.
Yeah, and
it's
Wilson
Herrera,
Contreras can have that.
Yeah, he doesn't now, and he probably will by the end of the year, because he's been trending that way heavily since the terrible first couple of weeks. But even Contreras, I wouldn't put in the superstar. I would put him in as a potential all-star, but he's not the dude. He's not the anchor player. And I think that's the thing, is you look at this team, Matt, they got a lot of pieces. Like, if you added a Kyle Tucker to this, or a player of that level, you're a World Series contender, I think, because you have depth guys. These are guys are all quality players, and that's one thing.
You're forgetting about the pitching.
Well, but I don't think the Cubs pitching is that much different. I look at, like, Colin Ray is in your rotation. Like, Jameson Taillon's just a guy. He's fine, but he's just a guy. Matthew Boyd's no better, no more higher upside than Liberator. Sonny Gray can match Imanaga. I don't think it's that, and Cade Horton's very talented, but he's very young and unknown. Like, I don't think it's that big of a difference. It is a difference. I think the Cubs pitching staff is a little bit better suited for a postseason than the Cardinals staff. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that's a huge difference.
First off, I'm not sure if the Cubs are legitimate World Series contenders.
Good point, because of that pitching, yeah.
Yeah, but even if we go down that path, I'm just there is no way I can look at this Cardinals roster with the current rotation and say they are a position player away from being a World Series contender.
I think, well, put it this way: you're a wild card contender at the moment, and if you add a 6-win player, you're up there with the Cubs and the Phillies and all those teams in terms of where you are in the standings.
When Andre Palante or Miles Michaelis or Eric Fetty is going to be starting a playoff game for you in the first round, that's not a World Series contender for me. I'd love to be wrong.
I don't tend to disagree. I think big starting pitchers are what really win in the postseason, but we've thought that about the Phillies for years, and they haven't done it these last few years. The Dodgers piecemealed it together with a bullpen last year. They didn't have half their guys.
That is the thing about the playoffs. The deeper you go, the wackier it gets in terms of
and the more it is about bullpenning and all of that kind of stuff too. So, and again, I would agree with you generally speaking. I'm just saying, adding a 6-win player makes you a first-place team.
Yes.
And if you're a first-place team, you're a World Series contender in my world. Even though it's not likely, you are that.
As is generally the case, Kevin, when we disagree, we're on
It's
the
pretty
same
close.
path. We're just getting off on different exits.
Yeah, we're pretty close. We're pretty close. All right. Hey, we got a lot of messages coming in. You guys feel free to throw them at us. Either the text line 314-436-7900, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter are fine too for those comments. We're going to continue to branch out because I'm going to ask you this next, Matt. Where do they get that next guy? And we'll talk about maybe the how as well. We'll do that coming up here on the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
At CertaPro Painters, we know that a happy place comes in many colors, like ones that inspire.
KMOX.
All right, Redbird Rush Hour 104.1 KMOX. Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here. So we're talking about where's the next Cardinals superstar, and obviously internally it could be there. We don't, there are guys in the system, Matt, further down that you never know, right? I mean, some guys that are talented guys. You can't really predict that stuff when somebody's super, super young. JJ Weatherholt may or may not be at that level, but even if he's going to be, it's going to take a bit. Right? I mean, you don't really expect a guy to come in and be. Let's put it this way. Go look at Kyle Tucker's early career.
Yeah.
Kyle Tucker was not Kyle Tucker when he was in his first, second, and third year with the Astros. It took some time to become this guy. Yeah,
and we probably should mention Ivan Herrera because he's still a young guy who's developing. We don't know what he could turn into.
Yeah, I mean, boy, it's hard because his numbers have been good. It's just hard for me to say that a guy without a position is that guy. But you may be right. He may be that bat. He may be, but I don't know. Is he a 35, 40 homer guy? He never was in the minors. I mean, he was a good hitter in the minors. He was never that in the minors.
Right. Of everybody who's on the current roster who's young and still developing, I feel like he's the closest to becoming that big-time impact bat.
Fair enough. I'd probably put him more if I'm comparing and not positionally, but just offensive capability, maybe more in the Seiya Suzuki category, right there again, that next level down. But then I guess my question is, not question, half comment, but where does that guy come from? Because it's hard to trade for them, even though the Cardinals have done it, and maybe they do it that way again. Maybe they find another version of the Goldie or Nolan Arenado trade somewhere at some point. But as you pointed out, that's getting harder to do. And then we're talking about either waiting to develop it yourself, which who knows when, or you got to get out there and throw $450 million out there. And I would certainly not want to be in St. Louis in this market spending crazy money on starting pitching. But you might have to when it comes to the offensive side of things. You might have to.
Look, there's been some comments made by John Mozeliak recently, and again, he's not going to be involved with this after this year. But there have been some comments made by John Mozeliak recently that indicate that the DeWitts and ownership are well aware of where baseball has gone, what the financial situation looks like, and the type of money it's going to take to bring in some of these type of players into the organization. So I think hearing that from Mo is a really good. It's not even a step. It's just hey, there might be a step there.
An acknowledgement, yeah.
Yes, that's the first step, right? Or that you want the acknowledgement.
Yeah.
So because they haven't really, this hasn't been their model. They haven't really worked that way. So to hear Mo say that ownership knows what it's going to take. Now get to a point where they feel like they're a legitimate World Series contender. They're legitimately one player away from that. Are they going to start spending that money? That's going to be the big question here moving forward.
And I think, to me, the kind of thing they need to do, and the guy that they the biggest outlay that they've made for an outside free agent was Matt Holliday. And at that time, that was 2010. He had been here already for, half the year. He came in 2009 via trade. But at that time, $17 million a year was a big deal.
Yeah.
That put him near the top of the annual average salaries in Major League Baseball. So this team has been there. They were up there with Albert. Albert made a lot of money in the latter part of his deal here. And again, that was 14, 15 years ago. So if you could be at the top end of the spectrum for your star player 14 or 15 years ago, you should be able to be close. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to be Soto. You're not Ohtani numbers, but most guys are not getting those numbers, right? I mean, even Kyle Tucker, we're hearing more like 400, not 700. So they've played at the top end of the salary scale under this ownership, and they can do it again, I think.
I think they can, and I'm not trying to create built-in excuses here, but I think it's a bit of an apples and oranges comparison to what it was like back then, because the financial situation Major League Baseball has changed. The haves and have-nots, the haves are making, even exponentially even more money on their local TV deals and things like that. So I think the Cardinals were closer to bringing in the revenues of some of these larger market teams then than they are now. That doesn't mean that they don't have the money to spend. They do. They're in a really good position. They're going to be back drawing 3 million fans as they are getting better and better.
Well, how do you do? One of the ways to do that, by the way, is to go get a star player that people want to come see.
100%. And look, the local TV money for the Cardinals ended in a pretty good spot from a local TV money standpoint. They took much less of a haircut than a lot of other teams across baseball did. We'll look at what that TV money is going to look like when all these national TV deals are going to come up in 2 or 3 years, and then Rob Manfred really wants to do a lot more national TV stuff moving forward. That's going to even things out as well. Gambling money is going to help this organization. So I'm not trying to cry poor, but I do think that the disparity is larger now than it was
that's fine.
years ago.
Yeah, and I agree. You can't have 3 superstars or 4 like the New York teams are. You can have 1. You can have 1 $400 million player. You can't have 3 of them. You can't have what the Dodgers have at the top of their lineup. And it'll be fascinating to see. Do you get out there this offseason if Tucker's out there and make a run? I mean, it's going to be a challenge because they're good right now. But how do you take the next step? And sometimes you can do that internally, but you can't really do that overnight internally. It takes time. And it's a matter of how much time they want to take on doing that. All right, I mentioned comments and questions. We're going to get to some of those, I promise you. We also want to talk about there's one other thing I want to get to, Matt, we'll talk about too. And it wasn't really about the Cardinals, but it's something that sports fans do when they confuse outcomes for effort. Kind of mix those two things. I want to talk about that a little bit as well. So hang tight. We got you guys covered here on the Redbird Rush Hour on 104.1 KMOX.
We can get more sleep, we can get more sun, and we can get more exercise. But the one thing we can't get more of is time. It's
800-575-6481. That's 800-575-6481.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 1041 KMOX.
All right, Redbird Rush Hour here on KMOX. Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here, getting some of your questions in a second. Right now, it's time for the Game Day Men's Health Peak Performer. Get back to the top of your game with Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com to find out more. Matt, I picked out your namesake today.
Okay.
Matt Swanson.
Okay.
Just, again, more of an appreciation thing. I'm not calling him the future closer of anything, anywhere, anything like that. I'm just pointing out that he gave up 2 earned runs in the month of June. Which is pretty good. But he's also missing a lot more bats, which I think is an important thing. So you look at him on the season, he's averaging a strikeout per inning, which is important for this team. They don't have that many guys, whether it's the rotation or the pen, that do that on a regular basis. And he's not developed yet into the leverage guy, but we're seeing some things, and he's been very helpful in the role that they've placed him in.
Yeah, a couple things on him. First off, you mentioned the strikeouts. The strikeout rate has gone up Smalley has gone up a little bit. I just decided to create a new word there. Smalley there. It's gone up a little bit over each month, which is good. 9 strikeouts over 9 1/3 innings in the month of June. That batting average against in June was fantastic at 103. And then of his 6 outings in June, 5 of them were more than 3 innings. So he is doing some things out there that definitely help this team in those games and also in future games.
Yeah, and he's got 2 pitches that have been extraordinarily successful so far. The fastball, which is a sinker. Opponents are hitting .091 against it and slugging under 200, and then the sweeper. The opponents are only hitting .211 and slugging .260. So, he's got 2 pitches that work, which is really, really important. Again, not saying anything beyond what we're talking about at the moment, which is simply he's doing the job you're asking him to, and maybe there's more. Maybe there will be some more in there as you go.
From an Arsenal standpoint, he uses his sinker about half the time, a little bit more than that, 53% of the time he throws the sinker. And then he throws the sweeper about 25% of the time and the cutter about 20% of the time. So he can play those 2 other pitches off the sinker, which as a reliever, if you've got that, you're fine. You don't need to have 4 or 5 pitches. If you've got 2 pitches and you can show a third, you're fine.
Yeah, and he's got a cutter for lefties that he's still a work in progress. He's not using it a ton, but it's there. So maybe that's something that becomes what you're talking about, which is that third look, especially for left-handers. All right, let's get a quick message in here, and then we'll continue the rest of the show with questions, comments, opinions, everything coming from the streaming feeds, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, or on the text line 314-436-7900. Sam throws in a question here. Says the Cardinals need, or it's more of a comment, the Cardinals need to trade for a starter or 2 to pair with Sonny atop the rotation. I don't know if you, Sam, mean now for the playoff run or for next year. But for next year, I would agree for sure that you're going to have to do something like that, which kind of hinders the whole pursuing a star player type guy. Although I don't know that that's this offseason, to be clear. It's just going to have to be at some point here in the not too distant future. I would agree with the assessment, Matt, that to be what we talked about is more legitimate as a contender, you're going to need at least 2 more that are going to be at or better than the Sonny Libby level.
Yeah, and I think the more interesting conversation though is what do you do for this year, because they're not going to want to trade too much away.
No, you're not going to want to give up your best prospects.
Yeah. Chaim Bloom is sitting there probably really looking forward to being able to help develop some of these young players, but at the same time, Kevin, it's not going to take the top-level pitchers that are going to be available at the deadline to come in and slot in as your number 2 or your number 3. We were just talking about this when we were comparing, Mitch Keller and Andrew Heaney to where they would slide in for the Cardinals, and we compared it to Jose Quintana a couple years ago when he came in 2022. So if there ends up being some of those mid-level guys who are available and the market isn't quite as robust as maybe some of these teams would think they were. The Eric Fetty deal last year, very similar to that. I think we look at Fetty differently last year than we look at him this year.
He was throwing better last year.
Yeah. If there's a Fetty type out there, Fetty from last year out there, well, they can slot in and maybe be your number 2 or number 3.
You're going to be shocked. I have a different idea. Okay. I'll throw that at you guys coming up. We got a quick hit of traffic. We'll tell you what's going on around downtown and the roads, and we'll get right back to that topic and the other ones we got on the text lines here on the Redbird Rush Hour.
Sponsored by Gloria Lou with your home
Traffic
sold guaranteed
from the
realty
Michaels.
314-325-6888.
Need to sell your home and you want the most money? The name to remember is Gloria Lou. Yes, Gloria Lou with your home sold guaranteed realty at 314-325-6888 and start packing.
Traffic from the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Well, we still got the 2 right lanes closed, South 270 north of 55 from the original crash we had. We had crashes in both directions at the same point. South 270's jammed north of Gravois down to that scene. North 270 still pretty heavy coming off 55. Folks have been using southbound Lindbergh as an alternate route. It's jammed Baptist Church down to 55. If you're heading down onto 67, they're trying to wrap up a crash southbound 67 at Meyer Road, but southbound 67 is a solid jam back through Double C. It's almost backed up to the interstate. Downtown eastbound 44 from 55 to the Poplars heavy. Westbound 64 slow from Lake St. Louis Boulevard out to 70. 70's got some heavy traffic from A to Z westbound, but eastbound 70, it looks like maybe they're picking up the road work, but there's still heavy traffic from the Warrenton roundabout most of the way into almost the Wright City Rest area where the road work was ongoing. Southbound 141 seeing heavier traffic now north of 13th Street down to Romaine Creek as well. I'm Roger Brand at the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
Getting right back to it here on the Redbird Rush Hour. A little false start there on pushing the button to get started. So let's pick back up on that starter thing, Matt. Here's where I'm thinking. Because I agree that looking at the rental market this year is less than ideal. I don't think there are a lot of names out there in the rental market that are going to move the needle at all. And I wouldn't want to give up good prospects to do any of those things because let's put it this way. If you're in first place at the end of the month, maybe my tone changes on that. All right. If you go on a real hot streak and you're like, we're in it, let's go get a rental to like a Merrill Kelly or whatever. And we did have a mention here from Justin who said ESPN has had Merrill Kelly as a target for the Cardinals. That would make sense as a rental if the Arizona Diamondbacks are looking to move him. But my view, if I'm going to try to do something here, and certainly Chaim Bloom is going to be in on anything that impacts next year, I would go higher, and I would try to shoot for somebody like Alcantara or Edward Cabrera if I could get them. Guys that are under control for multiple years. Alcantara, you know well, he's not pitching well now, but this is first year back from Tommy John, which is normal. But his velocity is back to where it was. He's throwing hard. It's not that. It's just command. And that gives you a dude that is a Cy Young winner, top of the rotation guy at about $20 million a year for the next 2 years after this year. Now, it won't be cheap. It's going to cost you players you might not want to trade, but what's the one thing they have in the system, Matt? It's depth, and they've got a lot of redundant pieces, a lot of pieces that fit in the same spots in the lineup. I'm not saying you can make the best offer to the Marlins. There may be better ones, but I like the idea of those two guys or somebody along those lines where you're doing it for this year and beyond, which makes it make a lot more sense.
Yeah, look, I can't disagree
and pay the price.
with it, but okay, I don't disagree with you, Kevin. I just don't see it happening.
May not. And you may not have the best offer.
I don't think they go down that path. I don't think they're willing to give up what it's going to take to do that. So this is one of those conversations it's hard for me to jump in on because I don't see that scenario really playing out. Would I love for them to go get a top-end pitcher to add to this team? And honestly, part of this is how good do they feel like they can be next year? And this next couple weeks could go a long way towards that. And that's going to be part of the conversation in the offseason as well. If fans want the Cardinals to go make moves this offseason to really win next year, well, let's be hopeful that they make a little bit of noise and maybe make it to the playoffs this year where they feel like that window is reopening. Because if they feel like they're still a year plus away from that, then it's going to make some of those decisions a whole lot tougher.
Totally agree. But I would agree with your assessment that it's probably not going to happen. What my argument is, that should be the effort whether it works out or not. That's where their target should be. It shouldn't be low-hanging guys that are free at the end of the year because the cost is going to be low. Do something bigger. Do something more impactful. And again, it might not happen. There are a lot of teams that are going to be in on the types of players that I'm talking about, even if it's not Alcantara and Cabrera, even if it's from other guys I'm not going to mention now because I'm not going to list all these guys. You may not have the best offer, but I'm saying that should be the approach if you're trying to be serious about being good this year and into the future. Because you got a lot of money coming off the books with Michaelis and Fetty next year, not to mention Steven Matt's money coming off. And you're not just going to be able to go into free agency and sign all those guys without taking the big risks you don't want to take.
And I do think there's this opportunity, and you mentioned the word redundancy earlier. This is an opportunity to clear your roster and clear your system of some of these redundancies, because one of our main narratives that we've talked through, Kevin, is there's not room on the roster for Nolan Arenado, Nolan Gorman, Thomas Saggese, J.J. Weather, they're just Brendan Donovan. There's not room on the roster for all of these guys. So at some point in time, you do have to do something to clear out all these redundancies.
Yeah.
And if John Mozeliak and Chaim Bloom identify this trade deadline as an opportunity to clear redundancies and he can help bring in some more high-end players, then yeah, you got to take that opportunity.
And I'm not trying to really lay down demands or anything. This is not about that. It's the reality of this situation, right? You're also adding the number 5 pick in the draft here this month. If it means giving up top-end young talent, then do it. You're adding more. You're getting the number 5 pick here. If there are players, especially you got catching depth like no organization in baseball. Move from that. You've got middle infield depth. You've got some outfield depth building with Joshua Baez emerging at Springfield this year to give you another power right-handed bat who can also run as a potential part of your team in the next year or two. I don't think you can continue to be conservative in both spending and in trading prospect assets. It feels like ever since the Ozuna trade, there's been a tendency to be afraid of giving up your best prospects. It's more of, we're going to go for the Goldschmidt Arenado guys and take the money, especially the Arenado thing, so we don't have to give up prospects to go get that elite player.
Well, teams fall in love with their prospects. That's not a
Cardinals
thing.
No, you're right. It's 100% across the board.
Yeah, this is something that, and they admit, I can remember at a winter meetings at some point sitting in a room with John Mozeliak and him sitting there saying, yeah, teams, you develop these guys, you develop relationships with these guys. It's a lot harder to trade them, and you feel like they're worth a lot more than maybe the industry thinks, and that's another roadblock sometimes in making some of these moves. Now, maybe this is an opportunity, Kevin, because guess what? Chaim Bloom doesn't have the long history with prospects in the organization. He eventually is going to 3-4 years down the line. We're talking something very different, but this might be a pull off the Band-Aid moment for the organization as Chaim Bloom takes over. And
if it could also benefit the short term, kick your ticket sales in the ass for the final couple of months of the year and help you make a playoff spot, that'd be a nice bonus.
It would.
Be a nice bonus. And I'll say this. My friend Casey Stern, who used to host at MLB Network Radio, had a great saying. I love it. Prospects are cool. Pennants are cooler. Parades are cooler. If you can get known for the unknown, because prospects are unknown by definition, the known for the unknown is not always a bad thing, even though it can be scary.
When Baseball America names you the best farm system in all of baseball, you don't get a parade.
No, that's exactly right. You get nothing. All right, we got one more segment to go. First, let me tell you a bit about Game Day Men's Health. You can find them at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Look, I can't give you better advice than this. If you're dealing with whatever it is, fatigue, lack of sleep, lack of performance in the bedroom, inability to lose weight, whatever it is, don't just deal with it. Do something about it, and you can do that just by starting the process of going to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Whether it's ED treatments, medical weight loss, they've got a whole line of different combinations of peptides that can help you accomplish various goals. For me, the solution to my issue was testosterone replacement therapy. My numbers were low. I didn't know it, but it explained why I felt like I was dragging my butt around every single day, and the workouts were hard to recover from, and I've been with them for 4 months, and that's gone. I feel the difference every day. I feel the difference every single waking minute of the day. you can have that same experience. Everything's overseen by board-certified physicians. The staff are trained experts, and they're very cool, by the way, but they're also trained experts in men's health, and it's super easy. One price explained up front. Can't get any better than that. So you got 3 area locations. The 2 that I visit are in Chesterfield and O'Fallon, Missouri. You can go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com and get back to the top of your game with Game Day Men's Health.
Hey guys, Glover here with my friend Mark Cantor at Cantor Injury Law. So as you know, I'm a lawyer, so I take this very seriously. Mark is a great attorney. He has a great team. He is from St. Louis. He is local. Call 314-628-9999 or visit CantorInjuryLaw.com.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be solely based on advertisements.
Don't miss Mosby Building Arts Home Improvement Show, Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on KMOX. One of the last call-in shows where you can get live answers to your remodeling, design, and construction questions. Tune in Saturdays at 11 a.m.
Traffic from the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
No, we still got issues going south. Southbound 270, they still have the right lane shut down north of 55 from the earlier crash. Also involved a Metro bus. South 270 is a solid jam at Gravois down to the crash scene. A lot of folks are taking alternate routes. Southbound 141 is slow from Highview all the way down to 21. Southbound Lindbergh from Tesson Ferry most of the way to 55 jam. Southbound 67 still backed up in spots from 55 all the way down to Meyer Road. More jam than it is slow, and that's due to a crash we've had for a while at Meyer Road. Downtown eastbound 44 from 55 up to the Poplars, heavy out west. 70 and 64 westbound at the merge point in Wentzville's a little busy. And we still have this roadwork jam eastbound 70 from the Wright City, or from the Warrenton roundabout rather, midway into the Wright City rest area. I'm Roger Brand at the MichaelsFlooringOutlet.com Traffic Center.
You're listening to the Redbird Rush Hour on 1041 KMOX.
All right, Redbird Rush Hour here on 1041 KMOX. Matt Pauley coming at you. Matt, you got Sports Open Line. What's happening between 6 and 8 tonight?
Yeah, we got a few things. We're going to talk with Benji Molina, a good friend of ours. He'll be on in the 7 o'clock hour.
Love
Scott
Benji.
Warman will be on in the
Scotty.
6 o'clock hour. So, fun show tonight.
It's a Friends Day.
It is a Friends Day. Doug Armstrong spoke today. We'll take some cuts from that and kind of go through. He had a lot to say, and I think he says a lot about the future of the team. So we'll play some audio from Doug Armstrong as well.
As an aside, I really like what the Blues have done this week.
Me too.
Again, not blockbuster necessarily. I think it's a risk to trade Bolduc, but I like the young defenseman in terms of his upside as a right shot D-man. So we'll see.
I like the Suter signing because it gives Dvorsky the time to settle in.
Yep. There's still things they're going to sort out. I also love, by the way, sorry, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I do love the fact that Nick Leddy was claimed off waivers and you save that money toward the cap.
Yeah, it's completely
that's a good deal.
I wanted to get to a text real quick here, Kevin.
Hit it.
Text message from the 314 says, Cardinals will probably not sign anyone past 2026 due to a likely strike until owners agree on sharing some portion of TV revenues. Cardinals will manage payroll like Brewers and Rays. First off, TV revenue is shared, especially from a national TV
The national
standpoint.
money is, yes.
And, teams that are, there is a luxury cap, so there is sharing going on there. But also, I think sometimes people get a little bit disconnected to reality. Yeah, the Cardinals pared back payroll. They didn't spend money this offseason, but they're still a middle-of-the-pack payroll. They are not the Milwaukee Brewers. They are not the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays payroll is sitting at about $88 million for total payroll and $56 for their active payroll. Cardinals are at $135 total, $132 active. So no, they're not gonna be the Brewers. They're not gonna be the Rays. They're not gonna be the White Sox. They're not gonna be these teams spending that low of money. Like that's a thing where you hear we're gonna pare back payroll, and all of a sudden you feel like the Cardinals are the cheapest team in the world. Or what is in reality happening is they just didn't spend more money, and they're kind of falling back into a middle of the pack team. And they can spend more. I'm not saying they can't.
No, I want to add to that, too, with this idea of the labor thing coming up, because I hear this from baseball people, too, not just from people like fans that are commenting, but like writers and things, where some teams are talking about maybe holding back in advance of that. That's just an excuse. You don't pay players during a work stoppage. There's no risk at all to signing someone now, and if there's a lockout or a strike, you're not paying them during that time. So what's the risk of signing someone? There is none. There's no financial risk at all. So any team that would use that as an excuse to hold back is using it just to keep money. And I don't think that this is the plan. We know what the plan is for the Cardinals. They've told us. They've told us they didn't hide this. This wasn't a secret. This wasn't like, ooh, let's see if we can sneak one by them and lower the payroll. They told us what they were doing. And now it's going to be time on the other side of it at some point, whether that's this offseason or the next, to get back to where you're supposed to be and start talking about the players that we've been getting into, right? Those high-level players that can take you from being pretty good to being a first-place team and a contender. That's what it's about.
It's good to pay attention to. You don't have to, but when you're going to make statements like that, it's good to have a better understanding of what's going on across baseball.
Buddy, have a good show tonight.
Appreciate it.
Matt Pauley's got Sports Open Line coming at you next here on KMOX.
You're not at your house. You're at a lavish seaside estate. You're not walking the dog. You're hunting for clues in an Agatha